Good morning, everyone. Dr. Stillman and Jim Laird here to discuss a critical connection, the connection between vitamin D and magnesium. And before we jump into this, I just have to say, I love talking about topics like this. I think it's wonderful. It's important that people understand the complexity of their system. But I also can't help but think of the countless people who have come into the practice or the coaching business that we run over the years who had listened to countless podcasts and videos and read books, and they have information overload on this topic. They think they know all about it, and they had a terrible vitamin D or magnesium level, and they had no idea. And the reason I mention that is that we are living in a time of information overload. And I think one of the biggest problems people face is that they are not prepared to actually take action. And this is why we have a medical practice. This is why we have a coaching business. People need to start to take action. And we see so many people out there purveying endless amounts of information without actually leading anyone to action. So if you're serious about getting results, if you're serious about getting well, we're really serious about getting you those results and helping you understand how to achieve them in a way that's in your best interests. Because believe us, when we tell you there are a lot of people out there who are coaching and coaching people, clients, and treating patients in a way that gets them short-term results and leads them into long-term misery, sorrow, and destruction. We've got some webinars coming up on that, don't we, Jim? On things like semaglutide, Ozempic, the whole weight loss craze. Isn't that next week?
That's next week. Next week. Tune in. It's on our YouTube already.
Right.
So you can set a little reminder for that. We're going to chat about semaglutide and all the fun things about it.
And we are passionate about helping people understand how to achieve these goals in a way that honors their biology, honors their underlying health and physiology, and helps them do it in a way that will give them a long, healthy, happy life. And we do that in coaching programs at Stillman Wellness, stillmanwellness.com. Join the Optimal Wellness membership. We've got Q&As in the VIP program 3 times a month, and we've got a Q&A in the general membership every month. And we've got lots of courses and things for you to go through and understand and learn. And it's all the most important stuff. It's none of the least important stuff, which is frankly what probably 90% of the content out there on the internet is. And then if you would like to become a patient at my medical practice where we can get you labs and, really do the whole, prescribing, taking care of everything from hormones to supplements to, lab testing, that's stillmanmd.com. Apply for consultation. There's buttons all over the website that you can get started with us with. And without further ado, we are going to talk about the connection between vitamin D and magnesium. Jim, how are you this morning?
I am great. And I love the fact that you talked about how much information there is out there. And the thing I need to do, one of my good friends and mentors is a guy named Jim Windler. And I remember when I was early in my career, I was overwhelmed with taking all sorts of certifications. And I was like, oh my gosh, what do I need to learn next? And, he said to me, he sat me down, he said, look, man, he said, be the best beginner coach possible. Most of the people you're going to deal with are not going to need anything beyond the basics. He said, it's good to know all this stuff, but you have to get people to actually do it and take action. And very few people actually do the basics. Very few. Right. Even at high level athletes, a lot of them are just going off gifts. They're not doing the basic fundamental things. So that's very important. And magnesium and vitamin D are 2 essential things. And when you look into this, it's no surprise that people are struggling with heart disease, with energy, with all these different things, because 2 of the most important, one's a hormone, the other one's I guess would be a mineral, right? People are chronically deficient because of our modern lifestyle. So these are 2 of the pillars of health, and most people today are chronically deficient in both. And no wonder so many people struggle today, right?
Absolutely. So if I had to delineate the link the connection between vitamin D and magnesium, the first word that comes to mind is stress. Now, stress is this very nebulous, poorly defined, vague, immaterial scapegoat. And that makes it something that I like to unpack a little bit because, like I said, countless people come into the practice, they have low magnesium and low vitamin D levels. And they come in very well versed in the health and wellness space, and they wonder, well, how is it that I've been taking magnesium for years and I've been getting lots of sun exposure, and yet my vitamin D is in the tank and my magnesium is low normal? How is this possible? And the answer really starts with stress. It isn't just stress, but we have to talk about what I can only call the cascade of stress. So let me give you all a very clear example. Let me tell you a story about a typical person who comes in with this set of findings. So they've got a low vitamin D, a low magnesium. They've been in the functional medicine, integrative medicine space for a long time. They've heard conflicting things about vitamin D. Well, it's a hormone that you shouldn't take because your body makes it, and if you make it, you shouldn't take it. Or maybe they've heard, well, you need to take at least a little bit, but you don't need to have a level over, say, 35. And yet they're dealing with chronic, serious health problems that haven't resolved with what they're doing, and they don't understand why. Maybe they get a lot of sun and they're counting on 20 minutes, an hour of sun exposure every day, normalizing and optimizing their vitamin D, which it may or may not. Typically, for those of you wondering, it doesn't. This is for two reasons. Number one, people may not be honest with themselves and then their doctor or their team about how much sun they actually get. Number two, they may not realize that their sun that they're getting, Nebraska, Minnesota, Maine, you cold northern states, your UV index is rarely above 6 or 7. You're rarely getting enough vitamin D from the sun. Florida, Mexico, Texas, Southern California, the southern states, it's a different story. So they may not be realistic about how much vitamin D they're actually getting from the sun. Same thing happens with magnesium. People think, well, I eat a healthy diet, I take magnesium supplements. Why would I have a low magnesium? Well, here's the reality. When stress enters the picture of any kind, we're talking about chemical stress, we're talking about psychosocial stress, emotional stress. You can divvy up, delineate, subcategorize stress into 1,000,001 different types of stress. So when stress enters the picture, there are a lot of things that tend to happen. Number one, people tend to go indoors where they get less vitamin D. Number two, they tend to reach for comfort foods and not eat very high vitamin D foods, specifically fish. Yes, they may reach for dairy, but generally they don't eat very much fish. And whether or not they should eat more fish is more complicated than just they should. It's full of vitamin D and omega 3s. So they get less sun, they eat less vitamin D, and they may or may not take a supplement. Now, the other thing is that as inflammation rises in the body can actually increase your demand for vitamin D. And as it increases the demand, your storage vitamin D, which is what we measure in the blood, ends up getting converted over into active vitamin D. So, you'll see people with autoimmune diseases, people with cancers, people with all kinds of problems who have a low serum vitamin D because they're converting it into active form. They have a higher need, and they assumed that because they got a lot of sun, they had adequate, optimal vitamin D levels. I strongly discourage people from assuming. I've just seen it end poorly too many times. We check vitamin D levels in the medical practice every quarter until they're normal. And we generally come up with a clear, defined strategy of you're going to take this much vitamin D in this format, whether it's light, the sun, a Spurdy vitamin D lamp. You can learn more about that in the light course that we've got at Stillman Wellness. We've also got links out to discounts on some of these products that I might recommend or might mention. So they don't have a clear strategy for optimizing their vitamin D. Stress will also tend to steal cholesterol for other hormone processes. This is why you tend to see low levels of things like cortisol in people who've been under chronic stress for long, long periods of time. it is common for me to see vitamin D and low cortisol together. It's also common for people who have low cortisol levels to have absolutely no idea that their cortisol is as low as it is. And we see remarkable improvements in people, not only in things like vitamin D status, but their overall health and wellness, their function, specific diseases, too numerous to mention, when we optimize their hormones with a variety of different methods, everything from real pharmaceuticals, which will use like bioidentical hormones, over to supplements to just support healthy, optimal hormone levels. But as you're under stress, it will consume cholesterol that could turn into vitamin D and take it down into things like cortisol. And any other hormonal abnormality in that cascade can steal that cholesterol from vitamin D. Now, can I prove that rigorously? It's hard to, because the reality is all these systems are interconnected and all of them are very dependent upon a multitude of factors in the environment and the lifestyle. But this is why we tend to see low magnesium levels and low vitamin D levels with stress. Now, magnesium, the link with vitamin D is that magnesium is necessary for vitamin D production and conversion to the active form. And the reason that's so important is that stress also tends to deplete magnesium levels. Now, this is why I see the toughest cases for me to optimize a magnesium in are people who are working a lot, under a lot of stress, business owners, entrepreneurs, CEOs, and people who are chronically ill and are very, very worried about their overall health and wellness. And their magnesium levels are often low with low vitamin D levels. And so no wonder they feel worse. And this is part of why, the vast majority of clinicians out there in the integrative functional medicine space are using vitamin D and magnesium together in virtually every case, because they see how they work together to optimize cellular function, optimize everything from immune function to cognitive function to athletic performance and so on and so forth. And understanding, though, that just because you take these things does not mean the levels are normal. And the reason for that is that you're unique, you're different. You have very specific, very unique to you, right? Set of factors in your life, your diet, your lifestyle, your environment, your daily routine. And one of the things that we do when we work with people is we help them identify, well, how stressed are you really? How much vitamin D are you actually getting in your day-to-day life? How much magnesium are you getting in your day-to-day life? Many people don't realize, oh, I didn't think I needed a magnesium supplement. I eat good, quote, end quote. Even if you eat well, even if you eat remarkably well, modern life is full of stresses of various kinds that we go over in more detail. Particularly if you're not on our email list, you should be. We talk about all these things uncensored on Thursdays in our webinar. And the reason we do it on that Thursday webinar is that we can't be candid about all the stresses of modern life, because the truth is people are making a fortune off of the modern epidemics of ill health. Everyone from the aluminum industry to the medical industrial complex has a vested interest in people being sick and people not being well and people being, overweight, lazy, unable to think for themselves. And because of that, we find that we tend to get censored on social media because we talk about the things that are actually degrading people's physical, emotional, psychological, spiritual well-being, and share with them the most compelling information that we have about how to protect themselves. And that's the Thursday morning webinars we do that are not on social media. To get access to those, you need to sign up for the email list at stillmanwellness.com. We promise not to spam you. We don't, sell lots of things through the email newsletter. We occasionally will have a sale. Mostly we just let you know where we are, what we're doing, and how you can tune into our content. So all of that is critical background for people to understand about vitamin D and magnesium. I see so much content out there about these things, and it is, for the most part, being generated by people who never actually work with patients or clients. They have no experience coaching people into success. They have one or two ideas and they get obsessed with those ideas, and they don't really have the wherewithal to understand that every single one of you may have a different need for these two nutrients based upon your context. And there's not just a simple, you've all got to take 5,000 IU a day. You've all got to take 350 milligrams of magnesium glycinate twice a day. And it all depends how much you take on what your goals are, where you're going. And that's one of the reasons why Jim and I, whenever we talk to people, coaching them, treating them as patients, whatever it may be, we're always asking them, what is your goal? They'll ask us, well, what do you think about vitamin D? Well, what's your goal? What do you think about magnesium? Well, what's your goal? Is your goal to have optimal cellular function and reduce your risk of death as much as possible? Well, the literature is pretty clear that the lower your serum magnesium level, the higher your risk of death. And there's no downside to magnesium supplementation. So then it's a question of how much, how long, how often, and what form, because it's never just magnesium. It's a magnesium amino acid chelate. It's a magnesium glycinate, magnesium malate, magnesium threonate, magnesium taurate. So what messenger or what carrier do you want to have bringing you your magnesium? And each of those has their own unique therapeutic value, which is not to be dismissed. That's the end of my vitamin D rant. Jim, what are your thoughts?
Well, we've been told that the sun, basically, if you go out in the sun, you will burst into spontaneous combustion and die a horrible death. So we've got people that are just scared to death to go outside. Combined with Romo, be quiet, please. Combined with the fact that we don't have as much magnesium in our food anymore. And I think I'm going to start doing my lives again in the mornings now that I actually have a steady internet connection. Knock on the wooden chair. Can you turn your sympathetic nervous system off? Can you relax? And most people today cannot. And you're going to burn through an absorbent amount of magnesium if you're constantly wound up. And I use this analogy all the time. Modern life is like getting in your car in the driveway, starting it, leaving it in park, and then revving the living hell out of the engine all day and wonder why your engine sounds like crap and it doesn't run well. You didn't go anywhere, but you still rev the hell out of it. And that's what modern life is. We've taken away the physical manual labor and we replaced it with mental, psychological, emotional stress. And I think the mental and emotional stress is much harder on the body than the low to moderate level manual physical stress. I think that's almost therapeutic to the body in a way. Of course, manual labor becomes a stress at a certain point that's harmful. But I think we've removed this low level stress and replaced it with psychological and emotional stress, combined with the fact that people just aren't eating great. And here's the thing, if you're stuck in this state, this emergency state constantly, even if you're eating a great diet, you're not going to absorb the minerals. You're not going to absorb these things because your digestion is going to be horrible. Because if your body thinks that you're in a highly stressful situation, a survival state, it is not going to make reproduction or digestion a priority. It's going to make survival a priority. And surviving is not thriving. And a lot of people don't understand that if you can't relax and you can't shut it off and turn it down, you're going to have a big problem. And you can make up for that with getting out in the sun more, and you can make up for it by adding more magnesium. But at some point, you've got to pull the car into the shop and get oil changed, get the tires balanced, get everything adjusted, or you're just going to be constantly putting patches on tires and doing these things that just kind of like buying you time as opposed to actually going after the root cause of why you're struggling.
Yes, absolutely. I agree. And I like that stress analogy. And I think many people are resistant to this idea that they have a lot of stress. And I understand why, but you have to really look at this through the lens of, well, what was life like 100, 200, 300 years ago? That's what we're really designed to deal with as far as types of stress. The human body is incredibly well adapted to that. I wrote about that actually a lot in my book, Dying to Be Free. Buy a copy, available on Amazon. It's a great read. You'll love it. And the thing about how your body and what your body is best adapted to, optimized for, is that it's not this life of artificial light and constant, really visual, auditory stimulation. Like when you think about what it was like 100, 200 years ago, you woke up with the sun, you worked by natural light, you did low level manual labor pretty much all day. If you didn't do low level manual labor, you did simple bookkeeping, administrative work. You were writing things down in a ledger, you were writing receipts, invoices, contracts. You did some kind of written work on a real page under natural light without a big screen, pounding your face with artificial light. And I mention artificial light specifically because it's very clear that there is unique stress placed on the body by artificial light. And so few people appreciate that, particularly the ophthalmologists and the dermatologists. Artificial light is a serious threat to human health through the skin and the eye, and the literature on that is, I would say, unequivocal. And yet at the same time, people are hearing this constant message and messaging of you've got to worry about skin cancer and the sun causes skin cancer. Well, if the sun causes skin cancer, then why is the risk of skin cancer doubling every few decades in our modern society as people increasingly live their lives indoors? The answer cannot be people are living longer. The average life expectancy in the United States has plateaued long. For many years, it's been flat, and now it may actually be declining. It depends on how you run the numbers, and I won't get into that here, and I'm no expert in it anyway. But the point is, psychosocial stress, light stress. Think about how weird it is that you can turn on a radio and listen to, audio stimuli endlessly. I mean, you used to perhaps go out into a field and do agricultural labor and be quiet for hours and hours and hours on end, not hearing anything louder than the call of a bird, the rustling of the wind in the trees, the sound of the occasional animal or farm animal. And now you can listen to loud music, that's highly disruptive to your brain at extremely loud volumes all day. And that's normal. And we find it pleasant. But the thing that you have to realize, and I remember reading this literature some time ago now that I'm reminded of as we talk about it, it showed that if you were exposed to something like a 70 decibel sound for 4 hours or more, it would double your magnesium elimination through your urine for something like 2 or 3 days. And there's people out there who have that exposure as a normal part of their day-to-day life and don't even realize it. And so a lot of this is hard to quantify. I can't tell you how much magnesium stress or burn rate you have because you work in your office under your type of fluorescent lighting. What I can tell you is what comes out on your labs. And this is where, the phrase trends are your friends come to mind. So what we'll look at in the practice is we'll see where someone's numbers are. We'll make a change. We'll add a magnesium supplement. We'll change their diet. We'll change their lifestyle. We'll change their environment. We'll change all these things all at the same time because we know they're good for them. And then we'll watch where the magnesium level goes. And if we get traction, we know that we did enough. And if we don't get traction, we know that we either need to double down or we do need to double down on what we're already doing, but we may also need to make some additional changes, or we may need to add some more things or subtract some more things from their day-to-day life. And eventually we get people to the goal. And that's the key that I think is so missing in the health and wellness industry, is that people don't think in terms of goals. They don't think in terms of, where am I headed? What is my trajectory? And it's something that I see oftentimes people come to us for care and they've been on the same trajectory for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And they know the trajectory is not compatible with their long-term goals, but they don't have a guide, a mentor, a system, a way to adjust their trajectory. And that is what we obviously help them with. And I want to mention too that I've got a great podcast coming up today at 11 on this topic. with Amy over at stillmanmd.substack.com, which is my own personal blog. We're going to be reviewing one of the best books, I think, on taking action and getting results that I've ever read. It's called The 4 Disciplines of Execution. So if you're not subscribed to stillmanmd.substack.com, head over there. And if you want to listen to it as a podcast, go to wherever you listen to your podcasts and just put in my name, my credentials. It should come up. Jim, what else about vitamin D and magnesium should we chat about this morning?
I think that's a pretty good overview. The Thursday topic is we're going to actually dive into specifically how it relates to cardiovascular health, which of course is a biggie, because that's what the number one killer these days.
Still the number one cause of death in the United States.
Well,
yes.
and I think one of the big lies in the fitness and health and medical industry is that people think they can have their cake and eat it too. And they can, to a certain point, particularly when you're younger, you can get away with things. There's not enough talk about trade-offs. Like, okay, so if you want to be, if you want to lose weight, or you want to be more leaner, there's certain choices you're going to have to make. You're going to have to do the table push away from time to time. You're going to have to make sure you get your sleep in order. You're going to have to make sure you're going to have to give up some things, right? You're not going to be able to go out and party on a regular basis with right? You can't go to the endless nacho table. Like, there's going to be some things you're going to have to give up, right? Same with your health. Like, if you're going to be healthy and age well, like, you're going to have to do some things. You're going to have to work out. You're going to have to do some things that are not pleasant. People don't want to talk about that. They're just like, take this pill, do this. We don't want to talk anything about trade-offs. And you're going to have to give some things up if you want to have some of these things. Like, if you want to be a high-level businessman, you want to have a multi-million-dollar business, probably going to have to put your family life aside for a certain period of time. Like, if you want to be highly successful in certain careers, there's certain things in your life you're going to have to give up. Like, you're not going to be going out partying with your friends all the time. So a lot of people don't want to talk about that. And I think, honestly, you talk about 100 years ago. Honestly, if we just went back to like the way things were in the 70s, I think most people would be in good shape, because
much better
you still had
for sure.
You still had TVs, but you didn't, you had 3 channels, 4 channels. So you didn't spend all day inside staring at the TV, right? Most people were active. They generally went outside. They generally ate more real food. We had wonderful phys ed programs. Children played outside. If you look at the videos online of kids phys ed in the 60s and 70s, they've got these huge monkey bars. They're all outside climbing. So, I don't think we have to live like the Amish, but you definitely have to make choices to live a more simple life if you want to live a long time. And if you don't want to get dragged into this, I don't know what you call it, but if you don't want to get dragged into this absolute cesspool of mediocrity and physical degeneration and mental degeneration. Yeah.
And we really are seeing the physical and mental degeneration of society writ large before us. People are sicker every generation. There's more heart disease. There's more cancer. There's more everything from dental issues and airway problems to chronic degenerative diseases. And it's not the mystery that it's made out to be by the people who make their money selling advertising space to the people who are making a killing off of human illness. I mean, the mainstream narrative on this is so ridiculous at this point, making this giant mystery. Well, we don't know, and we're still trying to figure it out. That's complete nonsense. We know exactly why people are sick today. We know exactly what it takes to get them well. Believe me, we do it every day, day in and day out, in the medical practice, in the coaching business. If you're not a member of one or the other, join today, stillmanwellness.com. Our optimal wellness membership is less than $1 a day. It allows us to make all of this great content. It allows us to have coaching calls with our members so that we can actually get to know you, because what we've seen overwhelmingly in the health and fitness space is that people, more than anything, need coaching. They need someone to help them understand, what is your goal And is your plan to get there realistic? And that's why every person who's coming to us, generally speaking, the story is the same. I've been to tons of people. They had these one size fits all protocols. I didn't feel like I got care. No one really got to know me. They had a very simplistic view of the world and what it means to be healthy. And I failed and I'm disillusioned and I want to know, how do I actually get to where I'm going to be? And what Jim is mentioning about this desire to not talk about trade-offs is that it is exactly right. I mean, people obviously want to have their cake and eat it too. And because of that, people tend to be drawn into these coaching or medical programs where there is no discussion about trade-offs. There is no discussion about, well, you're going to have to do the work. Oftentimes, I see them telling people that later, but then I also see them having a very ham-fisted, very simplistic approach that doesn't get people the results that they want. I just had a conversation this morning with a gentleman who said to me, "I have very little faith in supplements," and I said, "I don't blame you. Most people's supplement protocols are highly derivative. They're incredibly simple. They're as simple as you have low zinc, take zinc. You have low magnesium, take magnesium. That is not going to get people the results they're looking for. And that's why we use a very different system based on hair tissue testing, which we teach about and that you can learn more about at stillmanwellness.com. And it's why our patients will come in, they've, listened to lots of podcasts, read lots of books. They're very health savvy, conscious people. They've often been to multiple other doctors like me, and then they come to work with us and they actually get results. And it's because we have a different way of doing things. And it's because we really take a holistic view, and we don't just say we take a holistic view. I feel like there's so many people out there who say we're holistic, and you ask them about one puzzle piece of health and wellness and they don't know anything about it. And we generally speaking have the breadth to talk about everything and the level of detail people need in order to get the results that they want. So on that note, Jim, any closing thoughts?
Well, I think we're also inclined to tell people the truth.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Where a lot of people will not do that. A lot of people
Well,
will not make people
yeah,
uncomfortable.
a lot of people, and that's the thing about trade-offs is that, if you, like you were saying, if you're a high achiever, CEO, business owner, you're going to have to deal with taking supplements in order to support your nutritional levels and your performance at some point in your life, or you're going to have to give up your performance. That's how that is. Now, if you want to quit your job, sell your company, reduce your stress by a significant proportion, then you just made a different trade-off and you may not need as much supplementation, which is why I'm never surprised when people who, have a pretty low key, relaxed lifestyle really flourish on nutritional supplementation protocols we use and quickly see results and also see their numbers improve. And people who are running around, with their hair on fire, very keyed up, always in that sympathetic state, always, as you said, revving their engine in their driveway, their numbers often don't improve. And they say, well, why am I not getting results? Debbie over there is getting results. John over there is getting results. I'm not getting results. We say, look, the trade-off you're making is you're maintaining your high stress lifestyle and it's not allowing your body to recover. And sometimes we can't actually, even if we put in the right fuel, we put in the right ingredients to get the body well, the body can't incorporate them if the body's under too much stress. And that's no different with vitamin D and magnesium. So,
Well, the funny thing about these people that sell their company and then reduce their stress, they go nuts because then they don't have anything to do and they don't know how to be calm. And all of a sudden they go crazy because they've basically lost their coping mechanism. So we have to actually teach people how to relax, um, how to stay centered and grounded and present, and how to transition from running around with your hair on fire into something where you maybe do something else, but you're actually setting up boundaries before you start this. You can make time for yourself. You do all these things so that you don't just step from one monster stress situation to another. Pro athletes are a prime example of this. A lot of pro athletes end up drinking, doing drugs, gambling, because they're trying to
right.
mimic the same kind of feelings they got by competing in front of hundreds of thousands of people. when they retire. So they don't do a good job of transitioning into what am I going to do when this is over? Right. And so highly successful people have to do that. They have to, okay, so I'm going to be a consultant now, and I'm going to spend more time with my family. I'm going to deal with all the demons that I've dealt with that basically drove me to be this highly successful person. So it's a lot more complex than just relaxing, because a lot of people, when they go to relax, they have just as many problems as they do by working themselves to death, because the working themselves to death was a coping mechanism.
Right. And on that note, we see a lot of people who, yeah, they live. The way I would put it is they live the same story. So their story today is I'm a high intensity business owner, CEO, C-suite executive, whatever. And then they retire, but the story that they really were living is I'm busy. I have a lot on my plate. I have a lot going on. And all of a sudden they're busy with other things. And oftentimes the most important thing for us to do is to change the story from I don't deserve to have time for myself. I don't deserve to have good health. I don't deserve to be able to rest. I don't deserve to be able to take a break, into a story of I have time for myself. I deserve space and time, quiet, peace, rest, relaxation. And sometimes that's the biggest battle that they actually have to fight. Because once you start to tell yourself the right story about who you are and how you are and how your health is, that's when things really start to shift. And I always see people getting the most emotional and the most worked up and the most keyed up when they're making progress towards their health and wellness goal. And it's giving them all of that. And they're really uncomfortable with it because people need to realize that you seek what's familiar. You don't look for what you want. You don't chase what you want. You seek familiarity. If you are familiar with being busy, you will seek to be busy. If you are familiar with being a doormat, if you are familiar with overextending yourself, over serving others, being too giving, being too nice, you will do that no matter where you are in life. If you're used to being broke, rich, thin, overweight, sleepy, you know, keyed up to the point of, having a panic attack, you're going to get familiar with something and you're going to stay there and you're going to resist movement out of that zone. And part of our job is to help you understand, how do I move past all these things that are holding me back? But more importantly, what is the actual destination? Because we get so many people who come in and they say, well, I want to lose weight. You could lose weight by having your gallbladder out. You could lose weight by having an appendectomy. There's many surgeons, I'm sure, would be happy to help you lose weight surgically in a variety of ways. But what they really mean is, I want to be as healthy as possible. I want to have as healthy a metabolism as possible. And that's actually a different question than how do I lose weight? That's how do I gain health? And then the weight that you have that's in excess will fall off. So, anyway, I think that's enough for today. Jim?
I agree. Have a wonderful day. We look forward to seeing you on Thursday. Go to stillmanwellness.com, get on the email list, go to the bottom of the page, and we look forward to seeing you on Thursday, where we'll dive deeper into this, specifically with cardiovascular disease. I know a lot of people are concerned about that. So
that's right. Take care, everyone. Have a great day. Make sure
make
you
sure
get
you get
outside.
outside.